Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond Max Q. I'm Mollie Jahner, your host, and this is another AAM mashup, which some of my favorite ones are the ones where I get to have co-hosts come on, and I have my good friend Katrin here with me today. Katrin, woohoo!
Hello.
We get to have the privilege of interviewing Gloria Bouillon. She is the CEO of Aviatris Advisors, probably also ruining that. Should let Katrin go ahead and introduce all future guests. All that to say, we are privileged to have you here this morning. I am excited for you to talk about all the cool things you're doing and what's going on in the space. And so please, with that, Gloria, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. That's actually the French kind of version of my name, and that was one of the reasons I actually have the Aviatris Advisors in part of the name is because of my French background. So even though it's not very Americanized for my firm itself, it doesn't help with the pronunciation. But it's part of my heritage. So I figured
I
why
love it.
to the LLC that I formed. I'm the founder and CEO of Aviation Advisors. So I provide technical expertise and advisory services to mostly aviation and aeronautical companies and services that are looking for stakeholder engagement, developing in certain communities. So where can you define strategic partnerships? How should those be leveraged? Where are those strengths? Particularly as it looks, as you're looking at city planning and airport operations, sometimes these projects can get quite complicated. And so where can you leverage these partnerships? Where do you need to grow and diversify your revenue sources, for example? So I work with other firms as a DBE and develop airports and infrastructure and look at future planning. That's the part that I love.
Yeah, Gloria's role becomes more and more important in our advanced air mobility landscape. I think professions like Gloria, with her expertise, are really, really, really mandatory, needed with their knowledge when it comes to the infrastructure topic. So I know Gloria since a bit, and we had several conversations already, and so I would be very interested, Gloria, in what do you think are the hard to avoid points in the infrastructure planning when it comes to advanced air mobility and the already existing infrastructure? How can we adopt?
So that's a good question. The early adoption is key here. So early planning, because when we're looking at airport infrastructure planning itself, uh, even types of pavement that there's various types of pavement on airfields. When you're looking at the life cycle of those and planning for upgrades, maintenance on the pavement, the infrastructure itself, it takes years of planning. It's not just, we need to do this and within a few months there it is. It's not that type in and around airports because there's such stringent requirements based on the types of pavement you have from the FAA, and then you also have local ordinances and policies. So when you're looking at planning projects, we look at a capital improvement program. So it's called a CIP. It gets updated annually with the state and as well as with the FAA. So you have eyes on it from both the state, the airport itself, then it gets passed through the state. But anyway, so in short, it's a very long process. It could be 1 to 5 years, 1 to 10 years when you're looking at updating pavement. And then the full life cycle of most pavements are supposed to last about 20 years, though that depends on frequency. So when you're looking at planning for AAM operations, where to locate facilities, where to locate charging infrastructure, battery storage, and the like, you really have to start planning way early on to be able to incorporate it into what the state wants, what the FAA wants, and of course what the local communities and the other stakeholders want, as well as putting into play the other infrastructures and facilities at a given airport or aerodrome, depending on where you are.
I would never have thought the pavement would be a thing. I would never have thought that. But I'm not like, deep in the industry like you guys are in that sense. And so it's the different details that go into the planning process is crazy.
And you know, with that, there's even depending on the type of project and the amount of involvement, whether it's a pretty large scale involvement, there can be communities that need to be involved in the process, depending on how public of a process as it is. So sometimes that can hold up a project if the community is not very receptive on the type of development that would be going in. I've actually seen at some airports, certain development processes actually being fully stopped by local communities that may not want the aeronautical activities to take place in that community. And I shouldn't say stopped, but it's held up in the court systems. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming. So these are things that I help companies navigate with the prospective communities that they may be interested in. So I look at with investors and founders of where can we place you that you can grow and thrive and not just held up in various communities because it may not be as receptive for that particular business or use case, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's underestimated by our industry actually what it means to implement it infrastructurized, because when I'm talking to my engineers, there is no single thought of that, right? It's about the technology, the product, and go to market fast. But they underestimate really the infrastructure topic and the planning we need, because what does it help if you have a vehicle but you can't fly it anywhere?
Exactly. And one of the things that I help navigate is because I've had so many years in city government in airports with different city rules. So with different ways of how each city looks at aeronautical activities, such as airports. I can tell you from that experience that, you know, plans and documents can be created as well as plans to implement, you know, either route development or let's operate in the city. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that those are all almost perfect in nature, where the conceptual idea is there, the planning is there in a scenario. So a lot of it's scenario based, but then the real world challenges and sometimes political systems can get involved, and it can take years beyond what was conceptualized. So that's the part of the process that I kind of love, because again, it's how do we leverage the strengths in each particular community to use those to your advantage to be able to grow or place you somewhere else. So that's particularly what I do, because it goes beyond just a planning document, because the real world is, again, what we've already seen in the AM space. There are delays, there are timelines that have been much more, they're much longer than anyone, I think, I shouldn't say anyone, but they are longer than what was initially conceptualized by some of the OEMs.
What's an example of a project you're working on right now that pulls in all these pieces?
Some of the stuff I do is confidential, but
Okay.
a lot of, again, taking a product such as, for example, something from an OEM and pulling in where the best market, again, where the best area to the socioeconomic conditions of a city, what type of demographics, who are your potential users based on the aircraft or electric. Right now, one of them is for an electric OEM. And again, developing the strengths on what can you charge, what, you know, all of the factors that start up for production, and then of course bringing those into different cities. So I don't just do that. I also work for other planning documents for airports that involve forecasting and master planning data. So it looks at previous trending information, current trending, and then of course future trending information.
Are you international or just in the States?
International. I do a lot of advisory work now as compared to consulting work, and that a lot of it, like I said, is for operational and then strategy, kind of strategy advisory.
And you obviously haven't done this for your whole career, but you've just founded this, you're CEO and founder. We're a founder focused podcast. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what it was like to step out and do your own thing. I think it's fun to talk about that.
Yeah, so I had always worked, as I mentioned before, for city governments previously, and as well as consulting for a private firm before that. So I'd always seen what it was like in these meetings where you're already advising clients, you're advising stakeholders, and so I decided it was time to start advising when I was being asked to advise so much. And I was like, well, let's get paid for this now. So I started the LLC, and my intention is to grow it. I'm women founded, of course, and with it, I join on with other engineering firms to provide the services for some of the services that I need architects. We need, all the other marketing and create massive documents, and so. The intention is to grow it with other females because the Aviatris word is actually female pilots, and and so again, I want to create this eventually to grow to scale with other firms. So it started about 2 years ago, and it's been quite phenomenal, and been able to meet and fantastic people like Katrin, and we've actually well started collaborating a little bit. So one of the projects that I'm working on is the electric air race for the Pulitzer Prize in Springfield, Ohio. That's going to take place in October. It's the 100th year anniversary of the Pulitzer air race. So we're actually getting a mock-up 3D scale for the prize itself. It's going to be super exciting. We have STEM opportunities and a lot of the and job opportunities for Ohio itself. And so not only are we going to have the race, but then a forum for it's an industry forum for AM and anything involving autonomous drones and so it's going to be really exciting, and that's Katrin and I had actually kind of had involvement in the Advanced Air Mobility Institute previously, though that's kind of in the background. So
Yes, well, and you'll be at the forum at the end of this month, I believe, right? As well?
yeah,
Yes.
yes.
So shout out to that so that we can make them in happy. And Dan, we're talking about it. Go to the event. It's free and it's awesome and it's virtual. That's a shout out for it right there.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk a little bit about the hard parts of not just running your business, but also you're in this industry is fairly groundbreaking, but also in a really regulated space. What are some of the challenges that you face?
Because right now I do a lot of the business development, either going after certain projects. I write all the proposals myself. So a lot of it is because you're kind of limited and in staff, of course, it's very time consuming. So I think a lot of other founders would know exactly what I'm talking about in the business development side of it, where a lot of it is, outreach, the meetings that you set up with, like I said, I work worldwide with some of the advisory clients that I have, and it's very time consuming. Though when you do win a very a good project or a successful project, it pays off. But there is a lot of the part of it that goes behind the scenes, and I'm almost certain a lot of the founders know how challenging that is in the beginning.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Katrin, do you have anything to add to that? I know you're also working in startup land and you're also very good at biz dev, so I know you have faced some of the challenges too of doing it all.
To be honest, I think the people should get ready for a painful period because that's the truth. It's hard work. It's tears. It's good laughs. It's a mix of everything. All emotions you can face, you will face them. So, and I think the pretty important part here is as long as you love what you're doing and you know the reason why you're doing it, it doesn't matter in the end of the day. I mean, this one single thing you can move forward is one barrier less for the next generation to come. And I think this is why we're all three of us are here, We are all three females. We are founders, and we want to have the next gen a little bit of an easier life in our industry. Most probably, not only in our industry, but in general, to be taken serious as a CEO or a COO or whatever, a founder in general. And I think this is the game to play, right? There are not always sunny days. There's a lot of gray days as well, and you need to build resilience to keep up your own mood. I mean, you need to be very close to yourself that you don't go down. I mean, this is it.
That's a good way to say it. No, I like that. And I know we're all three working moms. So I'm very passionate about working parents in general and how much extra effort it would seem at times that takes. And I think we're in different stages, all of us, but at the same time, it's still that thought in your back of your minds. And I don't know, Gloria, if you want to comment on that at all. And feel free to say no. I don't want to talk about it. I know we started off with I didn't sleep a lot last night, which I think is the biggest toll on my little guy is turning 1 tomorrow, and also did not sleep well last night. So you are not alone in that. Got a big cup of tea.
Save
Oh,
your coffee.
great. What do you think?
This is like my
Exactly.
espresso today. So yeah. Yes, I have two little ones, and I have 4-month-old. So she's sleeping upstairs right now, but she's so much calmer than my son, and she's actually joined me on a bunch of meetings because you can just sit kind of in my lap or sit over on the side, and fortunately, I'm able to do that
I love that.
now. Yeah, it'll probably change, is my guess, quite soon. So I'll have to figure out how to do that. But my son, he's going to be 3, and of course, we're going to the airport tomorrow to go flying. So he's
Oh, I hope you post pictures. I would love that. I would love to see that. That's so
yeah.
fun. I have a 3-year-old as well, 6, 3, and 1, and so I understand and they're all boys, and there is just a fun thing about what they can't sit still,
Mhm.
and you just need to keep them alive.
Yeah,
That's kind of where we're going with it.
exactly.
I love it. I love that you're taking it flying. Well, tell me a little bit about, what you do outside of advising, like around the aviation industry. Like you're very passionate about it. I would love to understand where that passion came from and why aviation.
Um, Good question. The I had always so general aviation in some of the forms. So where you look at pilot certification, a lot of the studies show that there is a declining amount of pilots and as well as a declining amount of aircraft ownership.
Mm.
And so, and this has been going on for many years. You know, certain segments of the market in the general aviation category, such as business, business sales, and have been increasing, though in small amounts. Though when you're looking at piston single engine, they're actually declining. And so, I purchased my first aircraft, I think back in 2018.
Time out, time out. You just said you purchased your first aircraft, so you've got like private jets. Like I feel like we missed like a whole
No,
phase of this interview. Okay.
no,
What?
it's a 4-seater. It's 1969.
Oh, it only has 4 seats. It's okay. Like it's still a plane. And I'm like, that'd be nice to like flying my toddler in a private plane.
No,
It's like,
I actually had someone misconceptualize that idea of producer in Hollywood years ago, and they said, "Oh, we want to do a reality show around you flying around, to all these locations." It's like, I don't think you know what it is. This is, I have steam engines. I don't have any glass cockpit or anything like that. It's not fancy. It's like I fly by, using the Biora back horse in order to, so it's kind of the old school way of flying, but anyway, so it's an older aircraft. I have them in, and so I've always been passionate about aviation, flying in general, and because it's an industry that the regulatory challenges, the cost of ownership, the cost of maintenance is so incredibly expensive. That's why there's less and less aircraft and even or aircraft ownership. And even when I was manager, there were multiple times that we had aircraft that could no longer they couldn't get annulled anymore because they were so expensive. And so we had some of the pilots that had to sell them or tried to get rid of them pretty fast because they were so expensive. And so we had to figure out what to do with these older aircraft. And there's something called, a graveyard where they either get ferried off to a pavement where, they sit, or they're sold off for parts. So because of this, I'm very passionate about moving the industry to, not everyone can own aircrafts or fly like in that type of unconventional way where all my friends have planes and they're flying as well to different locations. But that's somewhat of the reason I've reached and grasped onto the AM concept, is because of the modes of transportation that will allow somewhat of your everyday users. Now, I understand there's, that's evolved into who are the users, and that's evolved into the type of passenger, though the ultimate goal down the road, when it's large scale implementation, is, for everyday travel. And so that's, again, because because if we don't do something about the cost of ownership and maintenance, and it's eventually it's going to be incredibly hard to own aircraft.
I
That's
mean,
true.
yeah, that's definitely not a world that I have like really had a ton of experience in. I know that my husband really wants to take flying lessons and like learn how to fly and do this eventually, just in case the zombie apocalypse, right? So we have a way out. But no, I'm just kidding. There's other reasons to fly too, but that's a big one. Like, all right, it's good to know how to fly. But I mean, well, you never know, right? You're like, oh no, I'm running away and I'm at a abandoned hangar and now I need to jump in an airplane and I don't know how to fly it. It's a very small scenario, but nevertheless, it's one we thought about. But Katrin, would like, quite a bit about this. Like, what other questions do you have for Gloria?
Yeah, I think one of the big questions remaining for me in this entire landscape is really the key of how can we merge the regulatories, the certification stages, the development of the different vehicles, different type ratings into a running industry. This is still somehow a question mark for me, because there's a big gap between, we have the technology for the vehicles, we have the technology for refueling. This is existing. It's not that it's not existing, but somehow it's a real hardship to implement this.
It is, and the aviation world itself has high barriers for entrance. It's in itself, just in its own nature. Here in the U.S., you have the extremely high requirement for hours for ATP, but that also goes into even being able to operate on an airfield, what's required. And so I think with the extremely high regulatory environment, which of course, it's one of the safest environments, it's still, there are ways that you can uh, redefine and bring on, with innovation. We've been able to streamline a lot of, AI, the introduction of AI, as well as other technologies in the aviation world, which has been similar in the way that it's been managed for quite some time, though it redefines spaces, how to use those spaces, what types of personnel, how to make personnel more effective, I guess, in the human element. So, in essence, there is a good thing coming out of the two executive orders that were signed last month, to look at how to advance the innovation part for not just drones, autonomous vehicles, also the eVTOL part of it, and the AM landscape. I think that's phenomenal for the U.S. because again, now there's a lot more pressure on this industry to come up with initiatives to make it available. So Middle East, being taking advantage, not taking advantage, but being able to partake in the commercial operations that will out of it. So I think we have a scenario where we're going to have a really good we're going to be able to see the cities that are implementing this very well, and then how to kind of create a framework for everybody else where to operate. So I think from that we will be able to gather a lot of information.
Mm. For me, there's one remaining potentially high risk, and this is where we are talking about infrastructure and implementation of professional used vehicles. But still, we have not a proper solution for all the private people flying just with their little toy drones somewhere. And when you're talking to people who are working in the field of drone detection services, you can hear that the tower maybe see two drones per average per day, but the software records up to 30 in average per day.
Uh-huh.
And I have no idea, to be honest, how we can make this lower airspace safe enough. And because I just have seen a picture, like a bird crashing again into a helicopter. And I just, my next thought was like, yeah, and now imagine it's out of composite and it's much harder and a drone hits your helicopter. So the bird was in the footroom of the helicopter, right? Where the pedals are for the pilot. That's really a danger.
Yeah, the last airport I was managing, I would frequently get calls on my 8-year-old has a new drone and wants to operate it, give it permission because that's, it's off. And I'm just, get out of my ears. Don't, because we had the residential portion of the residential, I should say, around most of the airport. It was around 400. It was over 400 acres, but the residential homes were so close to the runway threshold. It was only 600 feet in some areas. And so you would have, drones that were well within the final approach path. So thankfully, the Part 107 applied for all the other commercial operations, but that was the last thing that obviously we need is something that big or within the airspace and taking down, particularly now, right now with the cycle where we've had quite a lot of recent accidents. And so people are looking at the industry, and I think a lot of the public are wondering how safe aviation is. And so we have to have a certain guarantee of saying this is safe, mode of transportation, and these are the this is what we've done to prevent this, what we're still doing to ensure your safety. So
Mm.
Well said. Well, and I know we're coming up on time and I want to be respectful of that. Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you want to throw out there?
I think part of what everyone that I've known in the industry, for most of the people I've known in the industry, are in the aviation realm because they're so passionate about it. And I think Katrin kind of brought it up before. You put in all those incredible hours and time, commitment, because you can see the end result. And when you can help advance technologies and help advance systems for really the goal of accessibility, usability, or different types of whether staffs, or different vehicles operating in the space that they haven't operated in before. So I think we're all in it for a reason, a story. We all have our own stories and and so mine is, I want to obviously show my children the world that I've been kind of brought into.
That's a great answer. I love that. Well, and also we always end with what are you currently reading, which I'm always interested to hear.
Oh, yeah. So actually, I've started John Grisham books, and they're just kind of fun, quick reads. So the one I've been reading is The Rainmaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Fantastic. Katrin, I haven't asked you in a while, actually. We've been on a couple podcasts. I don't think I've asked you. What are you currently reading?
Yep. I'm currently reading something really which goes deep. It's called Aftertaste. And it's about what if you could have one last meal with a person you lost.
Oh my goodness,
So
that is
this-
intense.
yeah, and it goes really deep, and I really can recommend it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And yes, I mean, it's always hard for me to think about like just picking a meal in general, but then like picking a meal with someone else that you've lost, you're like, oh gosh, like that's intense. And I'll link in the description. You can meet Katrin, you can meet Gloria, all the cool things that they're doing, and definitely come to the Advanced Air Mobility Institute, the Global Forum.
Yes.
It's at the end of this month. I think it's actually next week. It's coming up, and these fabulous ladies will be there chatting about all of the wonderful things that are going on in this space. So with that, I will close out. Thank you very much for your time today, Gloria. Katrin, it's always a pleasure. It was lovely to have you.